The stars above the planet Veridon burned like frozen fire. It was a quiet world, hidden at the farthest edge of the galaxy, too small to matter, too far to bother. But on this night, everything changed. Veridon had always believed it would be ignored in the great wars that swept the stars. It had no army, no weapons, no threats. Just quiet cities and gentle people who believed in peace. But peace was a lie, and tonight, the truth came roaring from the darkness, in the heart of the Capitol Dome. High above the sleeping city, a single transmission station remained active. Red lights blinked in panic. Sirens wailed softly behind. Thick glass. Inside the control room, an alien technician named Rilvik stood trembling, his shaking hands hovering over a console that wasn't built for war. His antennae were flat against his skull, his eyes wide, glowing with fear. He had never sent a distress signal before. He didn't even know if it would work. But as the skies outside filled with falling ash and enemy fire, he had no choice. The Graltok had arrived. No one saw them coming. No warning, no declaration, just silence. And then screams. Their ships tore through the sky like black knives, blocking out the stars, unleashing storms of plasma. Cities vanished in minutes. Veridon's people didn't even fight back. Ran. They hid. They died. Now, Rilvik leaned forward, pressing the ancient red switch on the side of the console, the SOS beacon. A message would fire through subspace, bouncing from satellite to satellite, hoping to reach anyone or anything. But deep down, Rilvik knew the truth. No one was coming. No one ever answered these calls. The inner systems didn't care about colonies. The old alliances were broken. The council worlds debated, not acted. He didn't know why he sent the signal. Maybe he just didn't want to die alone. He watched the console blink once, then twice, then it was gone. Destroyed. The roof above collapsed under a blast. Fire ripped through the room, and Rilvik vanished in light. But the signal flew on. It drifted through the void, through debris fields and abandoned space lanes, past dead planets and forgotten battles. For hours, then days, it floated like a ghost lost and unseen, until it hit something, a dark satellite. Old, hidden, cloaked in shadows. It wasn't alien. It wasn't even new. It was human. Be black. Cold, designed to sit in silence, and listen for things no one else heard. And when the alien SOS touched it, the machine didn't ask questions. It just reacted. A beam of tight data shot straight toward Earth's inner systems. For a moment, the galaxy was still. Then the Deathworlders moved. No one in the galaxy truly understood Earth. Not anymore. Long ago, the humans had come to the stars. Full of hope, reaching out to alien civilizations with peace and science. They joined councils, made friends, signed pacts, and then someone betrayed them. No one remembered who fired first, but everyone remembered what happened after. Earth's colonies were attacked, their people slaughtered, and whilst the humans unleashed something ancient, something terrible. The Death Fleet. Millions watched in horror as human ships moved across. The stars like a tidal wave. Cities were turned to dust. War fleets were erased in hours. Entire species vanished. Deathworlders didn't talk. They didn't explain. They acted and then disappeared. For 20 years, Earth said nothing. No transmissions, no diplomacy, no trade. Their ships pulled back to deep space. Some believed Earth had gone silent forever. Others believed they were waiting. They were right, because when the alien signal reached Earth's command network, something ancient activated beneath the oceans of Earth. A fleet began to wake. Massive ships miles wide, shaped like blades, and mountains rose from their deep dry docks. Engines that hadn't burned in decades lit up with blue fire. Human soldiers trained in silence gathered in steel corridors. AI cores awoke. Weapons spun up. Orbital stations shifted into place. Admiral Karavas stood at the helm of the flagship Nemesis, her eyes cold. Her voice sharp. "Confirm signal origin," she said. Her officer nodded. "Outer Rim Colony, Veridon. System, alien species unknown. Attack confirmed.
Hostiles.
Identified as Groltok. Voss turned toward the screen. "Deploy the fleet." No one questioned the order. Humanity had made a promise long ago. They would not come back for politics. Not for trade, not for peace talks. But if an SOS ever reached them from a true victim, someone helpless, innocent, overrun, then Earth would come. And it would not come gently. As the Death Fleet entered slipspace, hundreds of alien systems picked up the energy surge. Giant rips in space-time opened like wounds. The stars flickered. The sensors of dozens of civilizations began to scream. Admirals panicked. Scientists stared. Refugees whispered. "They're coming," someone said. The Deathworlders were moving again. Back on Veridon, fires still burned. Pockets of survivors hid in old shelters, praying to gods they barely believed in. The Graltok laughed in the skies above, broadcasting their victory. They didn't even know a signal had been sent. They believed the colony had no allies. They were wrong, because something dark entered orbit silently. Like a shadow stretching over the stars. One of the Graltok ships picked it up first. A massive object. No life signs, no energy emissions, just drifting, cold. It looked dead. The Graltok moved closer to scan it, and then it opened fire. A single blast turned the Graltok ship into dust. Across the sky, human warships emerged black. Steel monsters that moved with terrifying speed. Dropships launched. Gun platforms locked on. Ground troops began landing like comets. And in that moment, the aliens of Veridon realized something terrible. The signal had been heard, and Earth had answered. The skies over Veridon had changed. What was once a peaceful blanket of stars now burned with the arrival of something terrible. It did not roar with fire, did not announce itself with banners. It simply appeared, dark shapes in orbit, bigger than anything Veridon had ever seen. Ships so massive they blocked out the light. Their surfaces were black, covered in sharp metal ridges, with no colors, no insignias. No beauty, just purpose. The Deathworlders had arrived. The Graltok didn't react at first. They believed they had already won. The planet was under their control. The alien civilians were scattered and broken. Their scanners picked up no resistance, just more debris, more targets. So when the first human vessel entered orbit, they thought it was some dying escape ship. A mistake, a weakling's last breath. That was their last thought. The ship didn't send a warning. It didn't broadcast anything at all. It opened fire the moment it had a lock. One beam, thick as a mountain, burned through the Graltok battlecruiser like a knife through paper. There was no explosion, no resistance. The enemy ship simply vanished into a cloud of molten vapor. Then the rest of the Death Fleet came through. The planet's upper atmosphere tore open as hundreds of human warships punched through. Some looked like jagged blades, others like mountains turned upside down. They moved as one, their formation perfect, like a machine made of cities. On the surface, the Graltok began to panic. They had never seen humans in battle not like this, not organized, not silent. The Graltak were warriors. They screamed when they fought. They hunted in packs. They celebrated violence. But the Deathworlders were something else. They didn't celebrate. They didn't speak. They just executed. Within minutes, human fighters swarmed the skies. Precision missiles struck enemy armor columns on the ground. Drones flooded the air, scanning, targeting, striking. Ground pods dropped from orbit, landing with heavy metal thuds across key enemy zones. Massive walking tanks followed, their feet cracking the stone. Human infantry spread like smoke-gray armored soldiers with glowing visors, moving in silence, and they brought no mercy. In the hills above the city ruins, alien survivors watched in silence. Some believed the Deathworlders had come to destroy. What was left? Others believed they were witnessing the end of all things. But one alien child, hiding beneath broken stone, looked up and whispered, "They came." Because in the middle of that battlefield, one thing became clear. The Deathworlders weren't just fighting, they were cleaning the infection. Admiral Kara Voss stood tall in the command chamber of the Nemesis, her sharp eyes locked on the battlefield. Map. Her officers worked around her efficient, fast, silent. She didn't need to shout orders. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. She had been born on Earth in the ruins of a city that had burned during the last galactic. Betrayal, she didn't forget. None of them did. Sector 8 cleared, her officer said. Enemy resistance collapsing in the Western Valley. Civilian cluster found in the ice caves of Range Delta, another reported. Should we proceed with containment or evac? Voss narrowed her eyes. Send Medunits, she said. Protect. The civilians, kill anything with a weapon. Our tone was like steel. Her orders were law. To the humans, this wasn't revenge. Well, this was duty. The SOS had been heard, and that meant humanity would act fully, completely, and without hesitation. Down below. On the ground, Jox moved with his squad through blackened streets. His boots crunched over glass and bone. His armor was heavy, stained with ash. His pulse rifle was ready, but he didn't need to fire. The enemy was already running, but that didn't matter. They didn't run fast enough. They reached the central communications hub, the same place where Rilvik had sent the original distress call. Now, it was nothing but rubble and flame. But near the ruins, Jox found something strange. A child. Alone. Alive. An alien boy with pale skin and frightened eyes. He was holding a broken transmitter, still glowing faintly. Jox looked down at him. You sent the signal? The child nodded, too afraid to speak. Jax knelt, turned on his cum. Target origin confirmed, he said. Civilians still present. Protect at all costs. Behind him, the other human soldiers formed a circle, weapons outward. Machines hovered above, scanning for life. Medical units moved in silently, tending to wounded without speaking.
No question.
No judgment, just action, because that's what Deathworlders did. They didn't come to ask. They came to end the threat. Across the planet, the Graltok broke apart. Some tried to escape. Some begged for mercy. But the humans didn't stop. Yet, they fought until every last threat was gone. Not a single shot wasted. Not a single soldier lost to carelessness. It was surgical, terrifying, clean. The aliens who watched understood too late they hadn't called for peacekeepers. They had called for Earth, and Earth did not come in peace. Back aboard the Nemesis. Admiral Voss stood over the final war report. One of her officers turned to her. Planet secure. Civilian status, stabilizing. Enemy forces, eliminated. She gave a slow nod. Mark the system, she said. Earth responded. Let that message echo. And with that, she walked away. No celebration, no emotion, just silence. Because the Deathworlders had answered the call, and the galaxy would never forget what happened when they did. The fires had stopped burning, but the smoke still hung in the air like a ghost that refused to leave. Veridon was silent now. No more gunfire, no more screams. Only the wind moved carrying dust, ash, and the weight of what had happened. Streets were covered in the remains of battle. Crushed armor, shattered walls, scorched ground. It looked less like a planet and more like a graveyard. But above it all, far above the broken world, a decision was being made. Aboard the massive, human flagship Nemesis, Admiral Kara Voss stood before a large viewing screen. The satellite feed showed the surface below images of wounded aliens, burning ships, destroyed Graltok bases, and human Medunits moving among survivors. Her hands were behind her back. Her expression was calm, cold, focused. Around her, the command deck was filled with silence. No one spoke unless ordered to. No one moved unless it mattered. They were waiting, waiting for her judgment. Behind her, a tall officer stepped forward. His voice was flat, professional. Enemy forces have been neutralized. 97% confirmed kill rate. Survivors among Graltok command. Their fleet has been destroyed in orbit and on the ground. Voss didn't blink. Ah! The civilians? Mixed species? Mostly Veridon natives? Estimated survival? 12,000. many wounded. Half the cities are gone, the rest barely standing. Slowly, then turned to another screen, displaying a live feed. From one of the ground units, a small group of alien leaders had been gathered. They stood in the ruins of their former council, hall now cracked and blackened from plasma fire. Their eyes were wide with fear. Some looked at the human drones floating around them. Others stared into the camera, as if trying to understand who they had summoned. Voss pressed a button on her console. The signal went live. Her face appeared on a holoscreen in front of the alien council. "I am Admiral Kara Voss," she said, "commander of Earth's Death Fleet. This is no longer a rescue operation. This is an assessment." One of the aliens, a tall, scaled being with golden eyes, stepped forward. His voice trembled. We thank you. Your fleet saved us." "If you hadn't come, we didn't come to save you," Voss interrupted. Her voice was sharp, slicing through the silence. "We came because a signal was sent. A signal we were sworn to respond to. That response has concluded. Now we ask, who allowed this to happen?" The aliens froze. Another leader, a soft-skinned female with glowing veins, spoke carefully. "We were not armed. We were not prepared. The Graltok attacked without warning. We had no chance to defend ourselves. And yet they knew where to strike," Voss said. "They bypassed stronger systems. They came here. Why?" Silence. The alien leaders looked at each other, nervous, scared. One finally answered, "We don't know. We've always been neutral, peaceful. No one is." "Neutral," Voss said. "Not in this galaxy. Not anymore." Behind her, maps began to shift. Files opened. Data streamed across the screen. Earth's AS had already scanned everything: communications, power networks, even planetary trade logs. The truth was exposed. In seconds, and it wasn't clean. 3 months ago, Voss said, this planet received shipments from Kurl Syndicate arms dealers known to work with the Graltok. Those shipments were not reported to any council. You hid them. Bought protection. You thought your deal would keep you safe. One alien leader gasped. Another stepped back. "It was true. It wasn't all of us," one whispered. "It doesn't matter," Voss said. She turned her back to the screen. Yes. Her face vanished from the alien's view. To them. The judgment had been spoken. But aboard the Nemesis, the true decision still hung in the air. Her officers waited. Admiral One said quietly, "Shall we begin planetary withdrawal?" Voss looked out the window at the broken world below. "No," she said, "not yet." Hours passed. On the surface, human squads continued sweeping every zone. They weren't just looking for Graltok. They were analyzing everything: weapons, stockpiles, data servers, energy signatures, even cultural archives. Earth didn't just fight wars. It studied them. It remembered. And when it was done, it judged Jax, still on the ground, led his squad through what used to be a government building. The walls were black with soot. The floors cracked and broken, but one room had survived. Inside, they found a vault. A hidden one. What was inside wasn't gold or weapons. It was records, data logs, proving that someone on Veridon had sent a private message to the Graltok. Weeks before the invasion, an offer, a deal. Safe passage in exchange for power. Jax stared at the screen. He said nothing, but his face said it all. They had betrayed their own people. Back in orbit, Voss received the report. The decision was now clear. She opened a channel to the remaining alien leaders. Her voice was calm, final. "Earth came because you asked." She said, "Earth fought because we were sworn to answer. But what we found here is betrayal. You sold safety for silence. You brought monsters to your door. And now you will live with what remains." One of the leaders stepped forward, pleading. "We were desperate, made no defense." "You had a choice," Voss said. She cut the signal, then gave the order, "Begin. Purge of all corrupted council members." Their names are marked. Human units moved instantly, targeted, clean, non-lethal weapons only. The rest of the civilians were spared. Shelters were reinforced, medical supplies were dropped. Engineers began restoring water systems. Earth had judged, but Earth did not destroy without reason. It punished those who betrayed peace and protected those who had no voice. That night, as the Nemesis drifted silently over Veridon, the stars seemed quieter. A message was sent to the rest of the galaxy. Your call was heard. Your crimes were seen.
Us.
Remembers. And just like that, the Death Fleet vanished back into the stars. But the galaxy had already changed. Because now, if everyone knew, if you cry for help, you'd better mean it. Because when humanity answers, it does not ask questions. It decides. The stars around Veridon shimmered like they were holding their breath. Above the burned world, the Death Fleet hovered in silence. Dozens of warships, black as night, floated like giants made of steel and rage. Their hulls bore no markings. No colors, no banners, only scars from past wars and the hum of weapons charging in the dark. For the survivors below, the sky was no longer a source of comfort. It was a warning, but Veridon was only the beginning. Admiral Caravas stood alone in the command chamber of the Nemesis, staring at the central screen. Dozens of red dots blinked across the star map enemy signatures, spread across nearby systems. Not just the Graltok. Other factions, smugglers, pirates, sympathizers, all of them had a hand in the fall of Veridon. They didn't attack directly, but they sold weapons, shared data, looked the other way. In Earth's eyes, that made them guilty. In Earth did not. Forgive. Set coordinates for the Krail sector, Boss said coldly. Acknowledged, came the reply. The ship began to hum. So did the rest of the fleet. Down in the carrier bays, soldiers suited up in silence. Power armor hissed as it sealed shut. Rifles clicked into place. Drones were prepped. Dropships fueled. Every movement was clean, trained, perfect. These were Deathworlders. They didn't celebrate victory. They didn't cry over the fallen. They moved like a machine, built only for one purpose, to end the threat. And now, the threat had been found. In the Krail sector, far from the shining centers of the galaxy, multiple factions had taken control of weak colonies. These worlds were unarmed, poor, used as resource farms or slave outposts. No one cared about them. The Council ignored their cries. But Earth had listened. The alien call for help had been more than a cry from Ver. It had been a signal from all the forgotten, and Earth was coming for all of them. Slipspace tore open above Krail 7, the first target. A quiet mining colony, at least. It used to be. Now, it was run by a war clan known as the Red Talon's mercenaries, exiles, and criminals. They thought themselves untouchable. No law reached them. No army ever tried until now. The sky split in half. The Nemesis came through first, followed by 10 destroyers and 2 carrier ships. No warning, no introduction. They scrambled ships, screamed orders, launched missiles into the sky. None of it mattered. The Death Fleet unleashed everything. Hundreds of fighter drones poured out like a swarm of angry insects, cutting through enemy fighters like they weren't even there. Precision beams fired from above, punching holes through hardened bunkers. Human ground units dropped from orbit like comets, slamming into the surface with a force that cracked stone. Automated tanks rolled out and began the purge. There were no speeches. No orders to surrender, only execution. On the ground, Jox and his squad landed near the main colony core. The air was thick with smoke. Alien slavers ran in panic, firing wild shots that bounced harmlessly off power shields. Civilians huddled. In corners, some had never seen a human before. They saw death in their eyes. Jox moved like a shadow, each step precise. One by one, he marked targets. One by one, they fell. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His presence alone sent the message. Earth had come, and it would not leave until the dirt was clean. One alien tried to beg for mercy, dropping his weapon and raising his hands. Jox didn't fire. He scanned the alien's data chip. It matched one of the names from Veridon's betrayal logs, JAX. Raised his rifle and pulled the trigger. There would be no mercy for those who enabled the slaughter of innocents, from one world to the next. The Death Fleet moved like a burning storm. Krail 5, Krail 2, and the Outer Moons were all hit in the same day. The galaxy tried to ignore it. The Council didn't speak. The wealthy core worlds stayed silent, but the people, especially those on the edges of space, they watched, and they remembered. Some cheered, some wept. Others prepared for war, but all of them felt it. Humanity was awake again, back on the Nemesis. Admiral Voss stood before her officers as the reports came in. Targets neutralized across 4 sectors. No human casualties. Enemy forces reduced by 99%. Civilian rescues ongoing. Voss didn't smile, only nodded. Send a message to the remaining Graltok stronghold, she said. Tell them this. She leaned forward, her voice like frost. You are next. The message didn't come with a voice. It was encoded, a burst transmission that reached the Graltok home fleet within minutes. They read it and they knew. The Deathworlders were coming in the deepest corners of the galaxy, where criminals ruled and dark empires fed on the weak. The name of Earth once again began to spread. Not as a myth, not as a story told to scare children, but as a force. A force that had risen in silence. A force that burned everything in its path. The same species once mocked for being emotional, fragile, too violent, had become the final judge. The Death Fleet would not stop until the galaxy learned one final rule. If you strike the innocent, Earth will strike back, with steel, with fire, with Deathworlders. The stars over the Graltok homeworld had never looked brighter and never felt colder. The once mighty war species, known across the Outer Rim for their brutality, stood on the edge of extinction. Their fleets were scattered, their outer colonies silent, their strongest generals dead. But now, for the first time in their blood-soaked history, the Graltok were afraid, not of death, but of Earth. The Death Fleet had arrived without hesitation. They had answered a single cry for help from a colony most of the galaxy had forgotten. Veridin, a world no one had defended, but the humans had come. They hadn't brought peace. They brought fire, and they had not stopped since. Now, with every system falling, the Graltok Council finally did something they had never done before. They asked for mercy. A single ship, white flagged and stripped of weapons, was launched from the Graltok Inner Command Zone. It carried no soldiers, only diplomats. They sent it directly toward the Death Fleet's lead ship, Nemesis, with an encoded message of peace. Human command. This is the Graltok High Council. We wish to surrender. We will withdraw from all occupied systems. We will pay for the damage. We beg for a ceasefire. We surrender, please. No more death. Inside the Nemesis, the message echoed in the bridge like a ghost trying to beg for life. Admiral. Kara Voss stood still, her arms folded behind her back. The screen dimmed after playing the message. Around her, the command crew waited in silence. For any other force in the galaxy, this moment would have been the end of war. But for Earth, it was not that simple. She turned to her senior officer. Response. Looked at his pad. The message is verified. Full surrender offer. All fleet signatures from the enemy are in retreat. The ship they sent carries no weapons, no crew capable of combat. Voss stepped forward slowly, her boots echoing against the steel floor. Send no reply, she said. Admiral. She raised her eyes to the stars beyond the window. They don't get to end it just because they're afraid. On the ground below, Jox and his team swept through a shattered outpost on the edge of the Krail fringe. They had found piles of dead civilians, Veridin natives, enslaved and executed when the Graltok began losing ground. The Graltok didn't leave survivors. They didn't take prisoners. They wiped out anyone who slowed them down. This was their legacy now. Earth was writing the last chapter. Jox stared at the bodies. He didn't speak. His visor's recording system activated and captured everything. Every scorch mark. Every wound. Every terrified face frozen in time. He uploaded the data. Back on the Nemesis, Admiral Voss received the file. She watched it in silence. Her face didn't change, but something in her eyes hardened. "They asked for mercy," she said after. "Giving none? After this?" She turned toward her fleet officers. "Tell them our answer." Her voice was ice. Across the system, human ships locked weapons. The white flag Graltok diplomatic ship was the first to be targeted. It didn't explode in fire. It simply ceased to exist. One precise beam from orbit erased it. No debris. No remains, just light. Then the full assault began. The Death Fleet dropped from orbit like judgment. Cities were marked, but only those confirmed to be command or military bases. Civilians, for once, were warned. Evacuation corridors opened. Earth did not slaughter the innocent, but they gave the guilty nowhere to hide. Graltok generals tried to flee. Their ships were tracked and disabled. Their command bunkers were burned out by drill missiles. Entire fleets attempting to escape were intercepted and slip space shredded before they could even cry for help. And still, Earth gave no reply, only fire. The galaxy watched in horror and awe. No one had expected this. Not from Earth. For years, the humans had gone silent. Everyone thought they had become isolationists, peaceful, broken from old wars. But now, their return had redefined what war meant. Earth wasn't fighting to win. Earth was fighting to end, permanently. At the final Graltok, fortress hidden inside a moon's icy core, Admiral Voss sent her only message. This is not revenge. This is balance. This is justice for Veridon. All those who cried and were ignored. The moon cracked apart 10 minutes later. Human stealth warheads struck deep into its core, igniting its frozen heart. The explosion tore the satellite in half. Nothing escaped. The war was over, and Earth had not accepted surrender. Quiet transmission spread across every major comnet in the galaxy. It came from Earth's fleet, simple final. Do not cry for mercy when you never gave it. Earth hears the innocent. Earth does not forget. Every council, empire, and fleet commander read the words. And for the first time in centuries, the galaxy fell silent, because they had just seen the cost of betrayal and the price of calling for help. When Earth was listening, the galaxy was silent, but not at peace. The Graltok were gone. Tire systems that once feared their warships now watched the stars in stunned silence. The Death Fleet had come and left nothing behind but wreckage, dust, and unanswered questions. Earth had not negotiated. Earth had not bargained. Earth had judged and acted. Now the rest of the galaxy was left with something they hadn't felt in its generations. Fear not the fear of battle, the fear of being next in the inner chambers. Of the Galactic Council, the highest leaders of dozens of advanced species gathered in panic. Their faces were tight with stress. Some shouted, others sat in silence. The room, once a symbol of unity, now trembled with mistrust. Screens floated in the air, playing footage of human warships destroying enemy fleets in seconds. Images of burning outposts, vanishing cities, Earth's silent judgment. They could have answered the call with peacekeepers, one counselor hissed, but they brought an armada. They didn't come for talks, said another. They came for punishment. The room erupted in chaos. One voice rose above the noise. Counselor Yilron of the Sarati Empire, tall, thin creature with gold-colored skin and a soft voice, stood slowly. You all knew this could happen, he said. You ignored the signs Earth warned us years ago. If a true SOS ever reached them, they would come, and they would come without restraint. Then we must act, someone shouted. We must demand they withdraw their fleet. We must hold Earth accountable. What will you do, Yilron asked, if they say no? The room went silent again. No one had an answer. Back on Earth, in the command bunker below the Arctic ice shelf, the Defense High Council met in a room built for war. Holograms of enemy systems rotated in the center. Screens blinked with data from every edge of human space. Admiral Karavos stood before them. Arms crossed, silent. One of the defense ministers spoke first. The council worlds are rattled. Dozens of diplomatic messages are flooding in. Some are demanding answers. Some are begging for negotiations. They fear us now. They should, Voss said coldly. Another minister leaned forward. You acted without approval. You escalated. You refused surrender. The galaxy thinks we've become monsters. No, Voss replied. The galaxy saw what happens when we stop asking politely. She tapped the control panel beside her. A screen opened footage from Veridin. Civilians buried in rubble. Children crying. Graltok soldiers executing unarmed aliens. The truth. This is why we answered the call, she said. They begged for help. The council ignored them. The allies turned away. We didn't. One minister hesitated. But what if they unite against us now? Then they'll finally understand how alone Veridin was, she said, and no one had a reply. Meanwhile, in the outer systems, old alliances began to fracture. The Varnic Republic, longtime allies of Earth, closed its borders to human ships, claiming they were too unpredictable. Trade collapsed. Embassies were evacuated. Elsewhere, the Talari Combine pulled out of joint science programs. They didn't say why, but the reason was clear. Fear travels faster than light. Only a few stood beside Earth. Now small systems on. The edge of nowhere. Colonies like Veridin. Forgotten places. They remembered who had come when no one else had. They welcomed Earth's presence. But the rest? They whispered behind closed doors. They talked of containment. They talked of forming a defensive coalition. They didn't dare say it out loud, but the galaxy was preparing for war. Against Earth. Back aboard the Nemesis. The Death Fleet hovered near the edge of neutral space. Their hulls still glowed faintly from recent battles. Pairs were finishing. Crews rested, weapons reloaded. But no one was at ease. Jack stood inside the hangar watching new data scroll across the wall. Saw the names of former allies now. Marked red. Trade stations that once offered fuel now flagged Earth ships as hostile unknowns. Even aid channels were closing. We saved them, he said quietly. Now they treat us like a threat, his commanding officer nodded. Grimly. They never feared the Graltok the way they fear us now. 'Cause the Graltok killed without reason, Jock said. Kill with purpose. And that's what scares them most. A week later, a secret message reached Earth. It came from inside the Galactic Council. A warning. They are forming a coalition. Not officially. Not yet. But the talks have begun. Earth is being treated as a rogue state. A death species. You have limited time. Admiral Voss received the message with stone-faced silence. She didn't look surprised. She looked ready. She turned to her officers. Order all outer fleet units to full readiness. Recall every ship from inactive duty. Rearm deep space platforms. Activate Protocol Black Sky. Cross Earth systems. The message spread in seconds. The Death Fleet wasn't going home. It was preparing for something bigger and in the shadow. Of every council meeting, behind every closed embassy door, one name echoed louder with each passing day. Deathworlders. A name that once belonged to a forgotten species. Now it belonged to judgment itself. The stars across the galaxy felt darker now. In every system, from the rich core worlds to the lonely mining moons, there was only one name on every tongue. Earth. The Deathworlders. The ones who came without hesitation. The ones who brought war like it was a natural force. Fire, steel, silence. They had crushed the Graltok. They had ignored surrender. And worst of all, they had made it look easy. But the galaxy was not done. Not yet inside. The marble halls of the Galactic Council lights dimmed as security locks sealed the chamber.
Owly.
Only the most powerful species remained, those who could shift. Policy move fleets and erase star systems if they wished. No more open debate, no more broadcasts. This was a closed session. The agenda was simple. Stop Earth. Counselor Yulran stood in silence as the others argued around him. We must strike. Preemptively, one shouted. Their fleet is still mobile. We can corner them in the Vega Arc. We cannot fight them directly. Another hissed. Their tech is beyond ours. Their soldiers do not retreat. Yes. They do not even pause. Then we isolate them, said. A third shut down all trade, cut their AI supply lines, turn their allies against them. Yulran raised a hand. The room fell quiet. Do you all hear yourselves? He said softly. We are not planning peace. We are not protecting the galaxy. We are preparing a war. Against the only species that answered a real cry for help. They're a threat, someone snapped. They're a mirror, Yulran replied, and none of us like what we see in it. While the council whispered of sanctions and secret fleets, Earth moved with purpose. The Nemesis had not returned to Earth. It drifted along the edge of known space, joined now by twice as many ships as before. The Death Fleet had grown. More carriers, more gunships, more orbital dreadnoughts that looked like floating cities wrapped in black armor. But this time, weren't just preparing for an attack. They were building something. Inside a distant asteroid field, engineers from Earth and Veridan worked side by side. Together they were constructing deep space fortresses, armed platforms with kinetic walls, drone forges, and long-range beam cannons. These were not defense systems. They were warnings. The message was clear. If the galaxy wanted war, Earth would meet them halfway, on the cold surface of a moon known only as Sector 9Y. Jock stood at the edge of a launch pad. Above him, new prototype ships were being assembled, stealth-class destroyers built for speed and silence. Around him, Deathworlder soldiers ran drills. They weren't just training for battle. They were preparing for total war. Jocks checked his. Calm. A message blinked across the screen. Coalition vote in 48 hours. Earth classified as threat level alpha. Prepare for strike attempts. He shut the message off. He already knew what was coming, so did the rest of the fleet. In the dark space between stars, strange signals began to flicker. Cloaked ships, long-range scouts, interceptor satellites, probes that weren't registered to any known faction. They watched the Death Fleet from a distance. They scanned Earth's formations, measured weapon heat, counted ships, waited, because the gathering was almost complete, back on Earth. Deep inside the Global Defense Corps beneath Mount Vanaheim, leaders met in silence. 17 systems have pulled away from us, one officer reported. 5 have declared neutrality to now list us as aggressors. Intel confirms the Talari Combine is building new slipgate cannons, another said. They'll be able to fire across sectors. Target our deep space platforms directly. No one panicked. They had seen this coming. They had prepared for this the moment Veridan sent its cry. Admiral Karavos stood at the front, calm and cold as ever. We will not strike first, she said. We will not fire until fired upon. We will finish it, a voice added from behind her. It was General Maddox, Earth's ground force commander, and no one questioned him. That night, across thousands of systems, the galaxy held its breath. A coalition fleet of over 3,000 ships began to form at the edge of the Quran expanse, far from Earth's borders. But close enough to launch, their ships were beautiful, polished, gold-plated, decorated. They were the pride of a dozen empires, but they were not ready. They had never fought like Deathworlders. They had never been forged by fire. As the last hour ticked away, a lone signal reached the Nemesis. It was not encrypted. It was not official. It was a voice old. Raspy, tired, from a colony Earth had saved long ago. You don't know us, but we remember. The others prepare to attack you. They call you monsters, but we call you something else. We call you hope. If you must fight, do not stop. If they fire, end it. Make them remember what silence cost them. The line went dead. Admiral Voss said nothing for a long time. Then she turned to her officers and said only one thing. Ready the fleet, across the stars. The storm began to move. The stars were quiet, too quiet. Not a single slipgate hummed. No beacons blinked. No signals broke the silence. Across a dozen sectors, thousands of warships from the coalition sat in formation, waiting for the final vote to end, waiting for one command to be spoken. One word that would begin the largest war the galaxy had seen in generations. They didn't call it a declaration of war. They called it a containment directive. But everyone knew what it really meant. Earth was about to be erased, or so they thought. Aboard the Nemesis, Earth's flagship Admiral Caravas stood in the command deck without speaking. Around her, the Death Fleet was fully deployed. No more shadows. No more testing. Their ships drifted across the stars like black knives pointed at the throat of the galaxy. Each one powered. Each one locked. And each one ready to die if needed, because this wasn't just a fleet anymore. This was Earth's answer. Voss opened a secure channel, one that reached every coalition ship, every listening post, every frightened colony. No encryption, no threat, just one message. Her voice echoed across the void. We did not seek war. We did not march into your systems, answered a cry for help, and we found silence. Her words were soft, but behind them was steel. We found a world left to burn, a species ignored. A massacre watched by the powerful, forgotten by the comfortable. Ships listening didn't move. The soldiers watching didn't blink. You call us Death Worlders. You say we're dangerous, that we're brutal. But we've seen your peace. We've seen your diplomacy. We saw what? It cost the weak. Across the fleet, human soldiers stood at attention. Jox was among them, his boots planted on the command deck of a stealth frigate. He said nothing, but his eyes watched the stars, knew what came next. Every soldier did. They weren't preparing for war, they were preparing for the galaxy to choose. Voss continued. We have no interest in ruling you. No desire to conquer. But if you raise your weapons against us, if you fire the first shot, then we will show you what Death Worlders truly are. Voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The truth didn't need to shout. We fight not because we enjoy war. We fight because someone must stand in the fire. When everyone else turns away, she paused. The final words came like a blade drawn slow. You wanted our silence. You will not have it. Not again. And the channel cut. Across the galaxy, silence shattered. Some fleets turned their weapons offline. Some captains refused the coalition order. A few left formation entirely because they understood. Because, deep down, they remembered Earth hadn't attacked first. Earth had simply finished what the galaxy tried to ignore, but not all listened. One coalition dreadnought, eager and young, locked onto the nearest Death Worlder carrier and fired a barrage of plasma warheads. The sky lit up, and Earth responded. The Nemesis didn't issue a second warning. Its forward cannons lit the black of space, the crimson beams that sliced through the dreadnought in a blink. Dozens of human ships launched in perfect synchronization. They didn't scream. They didn't celebrate. They dismantled everything with silence, with purpose. With fire, coalition fleets scrambled to respond, but it was already too late. The Death Fleet didn't fight for territory. It didn't hold ground. It struck where it mattered most. Command bridges, engine cores, AI control hubs. In under 17 minutes, the coalition lost 20% of its force in 30 minutes. They had lost control. And then Earth stopped. Just like that, the human fleet ceased fire. Their ships held position. No retreat, no. It's advance. Only a single final signal broadcast from the Nemesis. We do not want your empire. We want your memory. Remember Veridon. Remember who answered. Remember who didn't. The war that could have destroyed half the galaxy ended in under an hour. Not because Earth was merciful, but because the galaxy blinked first. Weeks later, the council collapsed. Not publicly, not loudly, but from within. Too many systems pulled out. Too many leaders lost credibility. New governments formed, built on fear, regret, and a new law whispered across the stars. If the Death Worlders arrive, it's already too late. As for Earth, the fleet returned to the edge of its space. They rebuilt Veridon. They protected the silent colonies. The council forgot, but they said nothing more because they didn't need to. In the dark corners of the galaxy, children still ask the question, what happens if Earth hears our cry? And the answer is always the same. Hope comes, but so does fire.